Good afternoon, and welcome to From the Top, the show that dives deep into the stories of the most inspiring entrepreneurs and thought leaders of our time. I'm Liz Priestman, and today we're honored to have with us a true legend in the world of entrepreneurship, Mr. Peter Thomas. Peter is not just a serial entrepreneur with an extraordinary track record of success. He's also an author, mentor, and visionary who has just released his latest book, Dream Factory. In it, he shares his profound insights into the power of belief and the genius within us all. Peter, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
It's nice to be here, Liz, with you.
Excellent. Peter, belief is a central theme in your book. You mentioned that belief is the oxygen in the spirit, to the spirit. Could you expand on the importance of belief in oneself and one's vision, especially for younger entrepreneurs?
Yeah. Well, that's a big one, because where do you get the belief from? Where do you get to believe? And what happened to me is, I joined the Army when I was quite young, Liz. I joined when I was 16 and spent 7 years in the service. And in the service, you're kind of told what to do, and you don't question it. For example, if the sergeant says duck, you don't look up and say why.
I hope not.
You might get an unpleasant result. So you learn to have faith and believe in your leadership, in other people. You learn that, and that goes beyond just the sergeant. But as I got older, got more experience, I found there were more people that I could believe in, leaders. And a little later in my career, I went into selling mutual funds, and I learned the rules of sale. And one little tip, that I pass on is, my boss said, I was having a hard time selling because some people just didn't want it, And I thought, well, gosh, everybody's got to have a mutual fund, And he came back and said, Peter, there's a rule. It's called 18, 3, and 1. And what that meant is you make 18 calls, you get 3 presentations, and you'll make 1 sale. That works. That math works. And, I believed in him. So when he told me that, if I sat and presented you, Liz, I wouldn't care whether you bought or not. I made my presentation and then left and made another presentation. And next thing you know, it worked. Actually what happened is I started making 18 and even more calls and 3 presentations and get my 1 sale, but I started getting better at my craft. So I'd make 14 calls, 3 presentations, get 2 sales once in a while, because you get good at what you're doing. So I believed in Lawrence. His name was Lawrence Henninger from Calgary, and I just believed in him, So I did what I was told to do. I've always been pretty obedient, and I learned later on is that takes all the other fuss out of your mind. There's no more questions. If you just do what you're told to do, provided it comes from a source that you believe in, a vetted source, then move ahead.
Leads me to my next question. In the book, you passionately argue that we are not stuck with our lot in life and that we have to determine our own destiny. Can you share another story or an example from the Dream Factory, yours or one of the entrepreneurs that you showcased in the book, that illustrates someone who successfully challenged their status quo and transformed their life?
I guess I'll just use myself as an example of not getting stuck. When I was 15 years old, my dad had some gravel trucks, and my job was shoveling the sand, making the sand level. The truck would fill up with sand, and gravel would be like this, and I would level it out. That was my job. And I looked at, my dad hired men to drive his trucks. I think he had 9 trucks. They had 9 drivers, and my job was work in the sandbox, leveling the loads. And I looked at that. And I thought to myself, the best I'm going to do here, I'm stuck. I'm 15 years old. I'm in Perryville, Alberta, leveling loads in a sand truck. So I saw an ad in the Star Weekly. And to me, I see it like clear as bell today. Like, I'm 85 now. I was 15 then. And it's like it happened yesterday. I saw this ad, join the Army and see the world, I think it said, something like that. I talked to my mom. I said, Mom, I'm going to call these guys. I got to get a hold of these people. You could write a letter. No phone calls, then you had to write a letter. But, I wrote a letter in. I said, Mom, if you don't sign for me, I'm going anyway. And so I wasn't stuck. So you have to unstuck yourself. You have to look at yourself. Are you happy with what you're doing right now? In your life. And if you're in your life, you need to have that. Again, I think we go back to your first question about belief. Do you believe in yourself? Because when you make a few kind of neat changes in your life, you start to believe in that, and change is good. Change is a good thing. Yes, it's chaotic, and yes, it's upsetting, but usually the most best deals I've ever found in my life, this is a deal network, have been in the times like we're going through and we're going to go through.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. I mean, you were a young man then when you made a bold decision to join the Army, which I'm picturing from your mom's perspective may not have been easy. But when we think about those young entrepreneurs, you've got a really direct interaction and relationship with GSEA, the Global Student Entrepreneurs Awards.
Yeah.
And that's been a really pivotal program. In shaping the Dream Factory, what have you learned from these young innovators, and how has it influenced your views on both entrepreneurship as it's evolved from when you started to today?
I think I'll cover this question by telling you that I personally believe that there's genius in everybody. I believe that everybody is a genius. The challenge is that sometimes the geniuses don't recognize it themselves, and they don't believe in themselves enough. They're stuck. They get stuck, and they let themselves become victims of wherever they're at. Whether it's, I'm married, I got 4 kids, and I can't work. How can I work? I'll never get over this. I got this job. I can't leave because if I leave, I might not get another job. And I call that kind of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And that's
Nice.
yeah, and that's what happens with us. So when I look at these kids, I've got kids, and I can call you're a kid, I can call anybody a kid.
Thank you.
But we tend to not believe in ourselves enough when we try things. And I can go over transactions, huge stuff, and I will just for one, because this is a deal network. I saw this project in San Antonio, Texas. I was living in Edmonton at that time, and one of my salesmen had left me and gone to the States. I never heard him for a while. Comes back and he sends me this package on a thing called Westover Hills in San Antonio. It was a company formed by the government called Resolution Trust, and everything was broke. The banks were broke, and the government took all the stuff from the developers and dumped it into this bucket called Resolution Trust. And then they had other guys bid on them to buy them. So he had this 1,276 acres of land, which is huge, in San Antonio. SeaWorld, if everybody's been there, is part of that site. And there it is. And it came to me. And so, wow, that would be a big deal. The biggest thing I ever saw. So I wind up negotiating. $60 to $80 million was spent on that piece of land. I bought it for $9 million, but I didn't have $9 million. I had 300,000. So I put that down and I said, I need to look at the site, and it's all refundable to me. And the deal guys will understand this, that I ran out of time again, I was trying to raise the money, ran out of time. So I allowed the first 100 to go hard, then the second 100 to go hard. So for 6 months, I danced with that deal. While I was dancing, I raised $4.5 million, which is exactly 50% of what I needed. I couldn't sell anymore. My wife bought a unit, my son-in-law bought a unit, my daughter bought a unit, and 2 or 3 friends. And that was it. I was selling $500,000 units in Texas from Alberta. So then I turned around, I said, okay, do I really believe in this deal? So I went out and I literally mortgaged the farm, you might say. I raised every cent I could raise, and a couple of guys who were nervous about coming in, I guaranteed them. Anyway, I got the deal put together, Liz. That was in about 1990. We and the partners have taken out 150 million from the 9.
Wow.
From the 9. And I got some very, very happy partners. Some EOers, by the way. There's a couple of EOers that are very, very happy, But that was all because I knew I was right.
Yeah.
I knew I was right, and I believed in myself, and I believed I could make it happen.
It's remarkable, Peter, to have that belief and trust it, and not just trust it for yourself, but to trust it so much that you're willing to invite your friends and your family and
All
partners
in.
along the ride. What a journey.
Yeah. Well, they say, you're not in till you're all in.
Right. That's true.
It's
Very
amazing how
true.
much, it's amazing how much how good you can scramble when you're all in.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Peter, part of your journey involves helping others. It's been, such
Yes.
a gift to me to have your guidance and at times your mentorship over the years. And now in turn, I mentor. And I'd love to hear what you see for mentors and leaders and how they can encourage that process of discovering genius with their
Yeah.
employees, their team members, and their mentees.
Well, as you move along in your years, I look back and I realize that one of the biggest drivers that I had is I seemed to always have purpose. Yeah, I always seemed to get up in the morning, and it wasn't all about making the money. It was all about life, all about, I've kind of done it all. I've, from riding the Harleys to jumping out of airplanes to, with all different friends, to be open to the experience of life. As you engage, you bring new people. Like I just think of I got a young man in my life. He was a GSEA winner about 12 years ago. And we work together, we have fun. And he's about 38 now, maybe, and we have the best times. And I feel that I can add such a big dimension to their life. Like I can look at something and say, no, or yes, or here's what I would do. If it was me, here's what I would do. So we probably do have hundreds of kids out there. That's what really excites me, and that's why I'm so excited about the GSEA program of EO. I think it's the best program in the world, and that's why I support it financially and personally. And I'm excited about it. It just keeps me going, and that's what keeps the old guy going.
I couldn't agree more. I think the next generation of entrepreneurs and innovators are totally inspiring because they look at the world differently than we do, and they look at the world much more globally than we probably had the opportunity to do so.
Maybe I feel so strongly about this is I was so lucky and blessed when I was that 15-year-old kid. I had people who treated me so good. My sergeant in the Army, it was the most moving thing in my life. I went down to buy a car, my first car, 16 years old. Looked at the car, it was a little baby Austin, said, I want that car. Went in the dealership, he said, yo, yeah, sit down, sign the papers. And I signed all the papers and that. And he said, well, we can finance that, And I signed all the papers, give it to him. And I had written down Private Peter Thomas, Canadian Army, Camp Borden, Ontario. He said, are you in the Army? I said, yeah. He said, well, we can't finance you. No, all ripped up the paper in front of me.
Oh, no.
And I took the bus back to camp, about 15-mile ride. And I was sitting on my bed in the weekend, Saturday afternoon, with my little head between my knees, very dejected. The weekend security sergeant came by. What's the matter with you, Thomas? And I go, well, Sergeant, nothing. What's the matter? And I said, well, and I told him very quickly what happened. He said, he waited a minute and said, come here. And he got up, he followed me. And never a word, I walked him to his car, sit in his car, and he drove to that dealership 15 miles away. He said, stay in the car. And I walked and I could see the animation through the window of the two guys talking. And he comes back out and he said, it's done. He said, he's going to give you the car. He left, told me to get out, walked away. I went in there, the guy just handed me the keys and away I went.
My goodness.
So I had 24 months financing on the car. And I was so thankful that he put a good word in for me. I paid the contract out in about 10 months. And I got a copy of the signed contract. And on the bottom of it, I choke up right now telling you, was Sergeant Bart's signature. He'd signed for me.
My goodness.
Yeah. And I never forget my whole life. I mean, Sergeant Bart, I was just an Army kid, nothing to do with him at all, but he wanted to help me,
I think it's a great example of a leader believing in you, and maybe before you've seen it in yourself, a leader looking and seeing the genius that's emerging within. And I think that's a gift from great leaders and great mentors to help foster that belief and ability to really develop that genius.
And, of all you entrepreneurs out there, you look around the 5 people that you fly with. Are they truly the 5 people that you feel support you, they believe in you, they love you? And if they aren't, change them.
Yeah.
It's not complicated. I mean, I just get so excited with everybody in my life. Like I did this interview, Liz, because I love you. It's fun.
It's mutual.
We inspire. Yeah. And you find that you will inspire that type of people around you. So that I do as a young person when you're getting started. No matter, and when I first joined YPO, I was welcomed into YPO, and what can we do? How can we help you? And I remember going through a little tough time with YPO one time, I was in trouble up to my ears, and I owed the bank some money. And this one guy said, "Well, Peter, just give the bank a haircut." I said, "Haircut? Like, what's that got to do with what's that got to do with you?" And well, he said, you don't negotiate with them. You negotiate. Like I owed a ton of money. I signed guarantees with another huge Canadian. This was my biggest mistake about 40 years ago. And
I think I read that book.
Yeah, I lost a terrible amount of money. I think you read it. I lost a terrible. One day I lost, I went down 150 million, because my partner went bankrupt, and it was horrible. I didn't know you could negotiate with a bank. I didn't even think of it. I'm like a 36-year-old businessman. And I thought, if you owe the bank, they'll kill you if you don't pay them,
Great anecdotes. It's always such a pleasure to have the opportunity to connect, because I get to hear these stories and chapters in your life that leave the rest of us with an opportunity to learn. And I want to touch on that because you're someone that's really developed great habits, and you're a big believer in habits and how they play such a crucial role in developing our potential. In the Dream Factory, you really talk about leveraging habits and building on those habits to get at your true genius. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, and inside the habits is learning to say no. All of our brains, I think we have lots of different capacities, but there's a full brain and an empty brain. And maybe you can take 10 things, and maybe I can only handle 5, but you can figure that out. But if you're a 10-thing person, if you plug 11 in there, you're cheating from the other 10. You don't have the time. So there's a lot of people, you get married, you have a family, you have the kids, you have a career, you have all that stuff going on. It gets to be too much, and something suffers. And so I find, right now, I call it the weeds. The weeds. I do not, I'm the vision guy in a deal. I don't get in the weeds. But I have weed people who are phenomenal. They love they live in the weeds. My accountant, Brian, he loves the weeds. I mean, he just smiles all day long. Bring me more trouble. But I just detest them. So examine yourself. That's where you can get a mentor to evaluate. Peter, what do you think? I answer this all the time. What do you think my skill sets are? Well, just keep talking to me for a while. What have you done so far? What's your history back in school? And really evaluate yourself. Each one of us can look at yourself and say, where is your sweet spot, your happy time, your happy place? And if you're not in it most of the time, you're probably doing something wrong. And habits, I'll go back to habits for a second. I'm a creature of habit. I get up in the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. I look at my emails and stuff. I go out, make my sweetheart a cup of coffee, then make myself a cup of coffee. I go look at my emails and stuff. I go down to the gym at 6 o'clock a.m. I'm finished at 7. And my whole time is habits. My wallet goes in my little place. It's got a certain place. My car keys go to another place. So that you don't have to, habits stop you from wasting all that time that we do being lost and having lost stuff. I really am a creature of habit, and I really have found it to be invaluable. And I recommend there's a book as well, not just The Dream Factory, but there's, I think it's called, is it Tiny Habits? There's 2 habit books out, 2 of them, and they're both
Tiny
good.
Habits.
Yeah, they're both good.
Yeah, I agree. So Peter, let's talk a little bit about visualization. I love the name of the book. You have Dream, which sets off visuals in your head, but you paired it with Factory. And we think of Factory as a place where you go to create things, manufacture things, put them together. Yeah. And, in the initial chapters of the book, you delve into that profound power of dreams and visualization. And I can't imagine there's an entrepreneur on the planet that doesn't agree with that. One of the things that sort of bothers me today is that there's a real push on social media and in books and videos that they've taken that idea and then really simplified it to illustrate how easy it is. You create a vision board and poof, everything manifests, and it's that easy. In your book, you get into a much deeper level and you talk about the structured systems to get at those dreams. Can you talk a little bit about those 4 pillars and that proven system and platform underneath the vision board?
There's the belief, you need your belief. And then the visualization is probably the most important issue of it all. And how I use visualization, I use visualization for every single thing that I say yes to. Like, so if I say yes, before I say yes, I visualize it. And I mean, I can use business circumstances to give you an example. I'll give you a funny one, just running, just running. I ran all my life, did a few marathons and things like that. And I remember there's a place in Victoria where it gets kind of dark. And if you run late at night, it's a little bit scary. You have to go into these woods and stuff like that. So I'd run into the woods and I pretend that I was coming into the other side of the woods was the stadium where I was the leading, like the whole crowd. Well, who's coming? Who's that? Who's running? Who's heading the pack up? Oh my God, it's Peter Thomas. He's heading up the pack. And I would run. I'd be by myself at 6 a.m, running as fast as I could, but motivated and pumped because I could visualize myself. I came down to Phoenix, Arizona, and I'd moved from Vancouver, and looking for something to do. I had no idea what I was going to do. Probably multifamily or something, or build some houses or something like that. I'd sold some stuff that I had in Canada. I was coming down here. Changed completely. I didn't bring anybody. I had a public company. I sold the public company. Did it, magnificent partners and everything else, and got out of that, cleaned it all up, came down. So I'm calling around and they said, well, you should call this certain guy. He has a lot of interesting deals. So I did. And he showed me this land deal he had and took me up in Phoenix to this big piece of land, 40 acres. And I looked at it. I just saw a hotel there. What can I put on this site? What could I put on this site? Thought a Four Seasons, because I was Canadian, and I said, a Four Seasons hotel. And I actually had never met Izzy Sharp. I never met him until a little after this. And I thought, I bet if he knew about this site, he'd want it. Before I put an offer down, I had tied it up. I tied it up. And so I had it tied up with a deposit. So I'm going to call into Mr. Sharp. Mr. Sharp answered the call. Hi, I'm Peter Thomas. I used to have Century 21 in Canada, and I'm down here in Phoenix, Arizona. I got this site and I tied it up. And as he said, well, let me get back to you. Excuse me. He calls me back. Said, Peter, we had that site tied up 7 years ago. It might be time to look at it again. And today, I bought the site. I bought Izzy and as a partner, and there's a Four Seasons hotel there.
In there, beautiful.
All done because I stopped long enough to visualize. Like, what am I going to do with this? And that's what we should do. I visualized my wife before I ever met her. She's exactly what I dreamed of. That was 37 years ago.
I'm not surprised.
But read it. So you literally, and it's like you say, not as quick and as easy as people like, well, I saw the Four Seasons and built the Four Seasons. It's not that way. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of everything, but visualization is the first leg of the project. You visualize whatever you want to do, and then you actualize.
Absolutely. Peter, your book goes beyond the surface level approach of visualization and conjuring dreams. And you present a very structured system that emphasizes not just the dream, but the rigorous work ethic, the core values, the SMART goals, all those things behind the visualization to bring it all together with a 4-step formula that you've used throughout your life with wonderful stories throughout. If we're focusing on those 4 pillars, let's pick one and talk about values, because I know that's such a key driver in your life. Can you share more with us about your values and what's guided you throughout your career and your life?
Well, when I was back in YPO, I went to my first meeting at YPO, and I attended a meeting in Hawaii. And there was one chap was speaking. His name was Red Scott. He had 17 companies. All 17 had YPO members running them. So here's this guy that had 17 companies. I had one that I was barely struggling with, trying to be successful. And this man had 17. I thought, and in those days, I was all about work. And I said, oh my gosh, I have to go listen to this man. So I go in, and he had a big room to teach in, and there was probably about 45 room for 45 or 50 people in the room. And there was, I think, 12 to 15 of us. And he said, look, it's a nice day, nice morning, let's go to the beach. And we're talking the beach. Okay, I'd never done that before. So we walk out to the beach, and we sit down, and he gives us each a piece of paper. He said, I want you to write down everything that you've done in the last month. So I write it all down. Then he said, on this page, I want you to write down what's the most important thing in your life, like your wife and your kids and your work and your church, and your community, all the things that are important. You write all that down. Then you write down all the things that you did with the month. And then you take a line and put the line between what you put down and what it aligns with. And I found that the only alignment I had was with my work. I said that my wife was important, and I said that my family was important. I said all those words, but I wasn't doing it. So I was not living what I call now in alignment with my values. And what happened, Liz, in 90 days, I moved literally from Edmonton to Victoria and changed my life completely so I could be more in alignment with my values, of my family and my kids and my stuff like that. Because when you're in alignment, it's easy. Like my values now are health, freedom, happiness, and integrity. And I just added the word legacy.
Oh, beautiful.
And now what I'm doing, everything is like, I'm going what I call the last quarter. And everything in my last quarter is about giving, like somebody told me I said, how much can you take with you? Not much. You leave it all behind. That's what I'm working on. What can I do to kind of make the world a better place and leave a legacy behind of helping? Because I've lived such an amazing, amazing, blessed life that what can I do to help? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I think this book is just that. It speaks to your legacy, and it serves for the next generation of entrepreneurs as such a reminder of getting at that untapped potential and finding your GQ, your genius within. Peter, when you are confronted with a big decision or a big opportunity, what's the formula that you've applied throughout your career to determine if you're going to move forward?
I have a coach. You might say, Peter, that's crazy. You're 85 years old. What do you need a coach for? Well, I do have a coach. I actually have a business coach, and he's sort of a life coach too. And many, many years ago, we were working through, he gave me a formula. I use it every single day, all the time, and not just for big decisions, but it's the same. I would make the same formula that I'm going to share with you for making a decision as big as where do we want to let's go on holidays this year. Where do we pick? I do the same, what I'm going to share with you, the formula, as to Peter, do you want to buy this hotel chain? Process, the formula is the same. And the formula is this, is the first thing that you need when you're looking at a decision-making process is clarity. Mm-hmm. Do you really understand what you're buying or what you're going to do or the issue? So if you and Ken are sitting there and you're deciding on it, well, let's go somewhere this year. No, Ken, do you want to go away for a holiday this year? Should we go to Europe? Okay. Well, clarity. Well, give me clarity. Europe's not clear enough. Where in Europe? Well, let's go to Italy. Yeah. Okay, Italy. What part of Italy? You want Tuscany? Do you want to Rome? So, okay, let's go to Tuscany. Okay, I like that idea. Yeah, we both sign off on that. Like, when do we want? When's the weather best in Tuscany? So you figure all that out. And then, well, how much will it cost to go to Tuscany? So you say, okay, we really want to go to Tuscany. Now, we've got real clarity. Well, then we really focus in. We focus, like, can we afford to go to Tuscany? Can we do that for a week? Do we go for a week? Do we go 2 weeks? And you get right down to the focus of there's nothing else except the decision on where you're going to go and when you're going to go, and how much you're going to spend. But once you get that, then there's just execution. And then you actually buy the tickets. If I'm going to buy the Four Seasons hotel, first I got to get clarity. What's it going to, okay, where, how big, how much, what kind of a site, and all that sort of thing. And everything about that goes into that clarity part. And then you get in there and you focus, you really focus. And can I get the money? Can I raise the financing? And not afterwards, you kind of should do that before, if you're going to buy it, and then you execute. So I use that clarity, focus, execution.
Clarity, focus, execution.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant formula. Powerful. Peter, thinking through the entrepreneurs that you've mentored, the people throughout your career that you've worked with as partners, strategic, or those that you have done deals with, you discuss at length limiting thoughts, and that many of us are plagued by it or conditioned to believe that we're not quite enough. Could you share some insights on how individuals can start to dismantle those ingrained beliefs and start to see the possibility of success for themselves?
Yeah, getting rid of old habits. Well, they say, but habits is that the way to get rid of a bad habit is to create a new one. If you're going to do something, get a new habit in its place. One thing that I have found over the years, I've never really explained this before. I've never really put it into words, so it's a bit of a thought process. But I find that everybody that I have in my life that I enjoy, I would call it more of a heart connection than a head connection. I feel that I talk to the heart, then I make sure it's okay with my head. Because like when I was, for example, dealing with Izzy Sharp in the Four Seasons Hotel, I can tell you this: you will never in the world find a nicer, better, more honest, phenomenal guy. And I didn't make hardly any money with the deal, but I loved Izzy. Working with him was a joy. And I know he felt the same way. We had fun, doing our deal. And most people I do stuff with, it's really a heart connection, but we have our heads connected too. But the first thing and the most important thing when I deal with people, because there's the honesty, the integrity, all that stuff that goes on, it goes without saying. It just goes without saying. So when you deal with people, my advice to anybody who's watching this is that look around with the people. Do you have a heart connection? Because if you haven't, you're missing something.
Right.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Peter, the book touches on the importance and the value of mentors. And I've been really fortunate myself to have phenomenal mentors and also have the opportunity to be a mentor. It never occurred to me to have virtual mentors added to your network of influence. Can you tell us more about that idea of virtual mentorship?
Yeah, I sure can. Many years ago when I was just getting started, I really realized I didn't really understand and know what I was doing. I needed some help. And somebody said, well, Peter, just get a mentor. Well, I didn't know any mentors. I didn't know anybody. I was a kid that, remember I worked in the gravel pit, and I joined the army, got out of the army and sort of went to work selling mutual funds and then got into business. And I just kept progressing. But I really just was going forth just on my own energy on the next. So what to do? So I thought, one day I came home and there was a book of Karsh, and Karsh was a Canadian photographer. I came home from work one night and this book was sitting on the table. And Karsh is a famous Canadian photographer. And I picked the book up when I came home and I said to myself as I thumbed through it, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be great if I knew one of them? They could give me their wisdom. And I thought, they can give me their wisdom. And so I went through the book and I picked out Hemingway, I picked out John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Gandhi. So I picked those out. I took the pictures from the book that I had and put them in a framed photograph on the wall behind me. And then I read everything I could read that was written about them, the books, the book on Martin Luther King, the book on John F. Kennedy, Gandhi, Hemingway. So I really felt like I knew them because I read all the material. I read the stuff. So then something would come up and I'd say, if it was a business thing, I would say, I wonder what Kennedy would do. And I learned to delegate from John F. Kennedy because I said to myself, if I'm the president of the United States, I'm not going to wash my car. He doesn't wash his car. I'm not going to go to that stupid meeting because he wouldn't go to that. And I kind of fashioned myself by looking through the eyes of the president of the United States. And Martin Luther King, he was my spiritual advisor because he was just so unbelievably amazing, a good man, just a good man. And so would Martin Luther King do this? I'd ask him. And I honestly, Liz, feel that I got advised, from these amazing people. So any of you out there who don't have any mentors, pick anybody from the universe.
What a wonderful idea and powerful. And you really broadens your boardroom table, if you will, with the most powerful figures in the world
who've ever lived. Yeah. Do you imagine having Martin Luther King at your boardroom?
Helping you make.
That's really good, Liz. I never thought of that. No, I never thought of them being around my board table. That is, I just always thought of them available to me, but at my board table, it's very good.
Yeah, a brilliant idea. If you had to close on a final message for the audience, what would that be?
When your values are clear, your decisions are easier.
Closing, Peter, it is always such a privilege to connect with you. I know there's a heart connection there with you and with Rita.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you not just for joining us today, but thank you for writing Dream Factory. Thank you for thinking about the next generation. I know it means a lot to you and your legacy, but to all those budding entrepreneurs, those innovators that are taking that leap of faith to start a new business. And while they're exploring that, they're tapping into that genius that they might just be discovering. And I love the book. If you're watching and you've got a young entrepreneur in your life, or you're ready to make changes in your own life, this is a wonderful book. Peter, thank you for sharing your wisdom and insights with us today. As always, an enlightening conversation and beautiful stories.
Well, thank you. I was excited to join, Liz. It's always good to work with you.
Thank you, Peter.
Say hi to Ken.
I will.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye.